Coming up on the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast.
It's that old commercial, Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. It's true. I have no idea how many calories are in a can of Pringles or if they even make those anymore, but I bet it's like 1,000 calories or something. And you don't feel full after eating that because there are zero nutrients in there. Our brain, to get that rush of leptin, a satiety hormone, and to actually have fullness feeling, we have sensors in our stomach and all throughout our digestive tract. We need nutrients. We need macro, protein, fat, and carbs, and micro, the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all of that kind of stuff. We need those to feel full. So I totally agree with you. It's more complex, but it is true, in quotes, that calories are a thing.
Hello, and welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I'm Brian Grin, and I'm here to give you actionable tips to get your body back to what it once was 5, 10, even 15 years ago. Each week, I'll give you an in-depth interview with a health expert from around the world to cut through the fluff and get you long-term sustainable results. This week, I interviewed holistic nutrition coach Megan Lyons. She's amassed over 10,000 hours of one-on-one nutrition consulting, also runs a top podcast called Wellness Your Way with Megan Lyons, and we discussed her process when it comes to healing her clients, along with her personal health journey, issues with chronic stress, ways to manage stress, important labs for testing gut health, along with her one tip to get your body back to what it once was. Really enjoyed my interview with Megan. I know you will too. Thanks so much for listening and enjoy the show. All right, welcome to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. My name is Brian Grin, and I have Megan Lyons on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Brian. Happy to be here.
Happy to have you on. We were talking a little bit off air, and you graduated IIN, and
Yes.
Was that the first? Was that your start into like health coaching? Was
That
IIN?
was the start. Yes. Like I told you, it was just for kicks. Honestly, it was just for me. I didn't intend for this to be a career. I was doing management consulting, but that kind of opened my eyes. We had to do some practice clients, as I'm sure you'll remember. And I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. Let it simmer for a couple years. And then a few years later, jumped off and haven't looked back since.
Yeah, and then did you get your master's in holistic nutrition after
Yes,
that? Yeah.
I did. I'm an education junkie. I really can't stop, although my husband just hopes and prays that this is my last one. I did the master's in holistic nutrition, a couple board certifications, and I'm now just a few months away from finishing my doctorate of clinical nutrition.
And how was that experience?
Oh, I loved it. The master's was good. The doctorate was amazing. I really, really enjoyed the doctorate. It was a lot of hands-on, like case review, a lot of research, which honestly I like. And I don't get the opportunity, like most clients don't want to hear about the research, which I totally understand. This is not their 24/7, but being able to dive into that and talk to other people in the field. We have a small cohort, so we know everyone. It's just been really fun.
And what else do you like to do other than study and read research?
Yeah, I know. Well, that's it. No, I do sometimes like to do other things. I love working out of any kind. I love Pilates. I love weightlifting. I love running, although I've been through running too much, and that's certainly not the answer. I love classic, like kickboxing, you name it, anything I just love. My secret talent when people ask me this is crossword puzzles. I genuinely love crossword puzzles,
That's like my wife.
yeah. Oh my gosh, so much fun. I could do them for a million hours a day. Reading. I have so much family. I have 8 nieces and nephews, so I spend a lot of time with them. They're all the way from just turned 1 to 20, about to turn 23. So I have a really wide variety of that. Love traveling, love cooking, honestly. Love doing life. I try to find a way to add some variety to every single day, even though a lot of it is that research and client work. There's just so much else to do. So I'm a happy person.
And I read that you're a Dallas Mavericks fan and they're in the finals. Right?
Oh
You're
my
excited.
goodness. Yes.
Yeah.
My first dog is named Maverick, not after Top Gun, but after the Mavericks.
Oh, yeah.
He doesn't really like the Mavs as much as I do, but goodness, I am such a fan. I just love going to the games. Right now in the finals, they're a little expensive, but I'm still going to get
Oh,
to go
are
to.
you gonna go?
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, I
Yeah.
went to the Western Conference Finals game 4. And I won't make it to all the games in the finals, but got to get to one.
Yeah, so when this comes out, I think the finals will probably be getting going, but it should be a good series. So
Yes. Oh, I can't wait.
um well, just getting into your work, like what's your typical client, and like is there something that you see like across the board with a lot of people that, as far as health issues and problems that you address?
Yeah. I would say my typical client, like if I really had to stereotype them, is probably a woman in her late 40s. Although only 60% of my clients are women, 40% are men. I know your audience is a little bit skewed towards men. So I have lots to say about that as well. And then I have a wide variety of age ranges too. My oldest client ever was 89. I'm really looking for someone older. That would be great. But all the way down through teenagers. So I really see the spectrum. And that keeps it interesting for me. Again, if I had to choose the common, like the one average client, it would probably be someone who has a confluence of metabolic syndrome for sure, which is a combination of overweight or obesity, blood sugar dysregulation, various other things creeping up, like blood pressure creeping up, cholesterol creeping up, all of these things. That creeping up is my average client. Oh no, I haven't had to worry about this. And now something's happening. I'm not sure I really want to go on medication. Let's give it a shot and see if I can do anything. So, that, as you know, is rooted in inflammation. It's rooted in the standard American diet, lifestyle, all of that kind of stuff. But that's probably the average for me.
And like, what's your process? Do you do initial testing, and like how do you base like sort of the structure of your program that you work with these individuals? Obviously, it's a case by case basis, I'm sure, but
Yeah, it is a case by case basis. I mean, I love labs. Labs are so much fun for me. I love to run labs on myself, probably even more than is helpful because it's just so cool to see what your body's doing. So if it were cheap and easy and didn't have to get a blood draw, I would surely do it on every single person, but it's not any of those things. So I leave it up to my clients if they already have a good set of labs, which I frankly rarely see from another practitioner. But if they have it, great. Or if they choose not to do it, great. If they're really just targeting symptoms and how they feel, I think that's their perspective. Of course, if they want to run some functional labs, I'm happy to do that as well. But we'll get whatever baseline we can get, whether that is labs or it's symptoms, an intake questionnaire, et cetera. And then my process is just really building on where they are and getting them one step closer each session to where they want to be. So it's very rooted in gradual change. I don't align with any one, like the lion's share is not keto, the lion's share is not Whole30, the lion's share is not anything. It really depends on the person. And we have a variety of programs, whether it's me, I tackle some of the more complex cases or people who need a lot of accountability. And then I have a team of nutritionists who can tackle all kinds of different things. I brought them on thinking, oh, they would just handle the easy cases, but in many cases, they're even better than me. So we kind of divide up based on the person and see what we can do to get them closer to their goals.
and do you typically work with individuals for like a certain time period, or is there like a few options from that?
Yeah, there are a few options. Most of our programs are around 3 months. And then some people choose to do another package after that. I have a handful, like a small handful, less than 5 clients who have been seeing me every couple of months since 2014, but
Mm.
that's definitely the rare occasion. Most people are done after 3 to 6 months.
And what would you say? I mean, you've been doing this since what, 2006? What,
14.
14? Okay. And you
Yeah.
wrote a book in 2016.
Yes.
And yeah, being in the health and wellness industry for a while, like you definitely change your mind on things. Were there
Yes.
one or two things that you've changed your mind
Oh, so many things.
on?
Really, truly, so many things. I have gone all over the place on carbohydrates. First of
Mhm.
all, I used to be like a calories are king and carbohydrates, you can fill up on fewer calories for some carbohydrates. So let's go all the way there.
Hmm.
And then I went into a carbohydrates are evil and like we should never ever eat carbohydrates aside from like spinach. And now I'm somewhere in the middle. I tend to feel better on a much lower carbohydrate diet, even though I'm active. But I know if I go too low, my hormones don't do very well. So I find carbohydrates to be something we really need to tailor based on the person's goals, lab work, all of that kind of stuff. I think I searched for so long. Honestly, part of the reason for getting into this was my own personal journey, as many of us go through. But I searched for so long to find a way to not have stress be part of the equation. Like,
Mm.
oh, if I only eat perfectly and exercise perfectly and take all the supplements in the world and all this stuff, then I can override the stress factor for my health. But I've changed my mind and I find that is absolutely impossible. Like stress has to be part of it. I have so many people who say, I'm just here to work on gut health or whatever. And I'm like, okay, well, stress is part of it. Like I'll give you the supplements, I'll give you the dietary protocols. But unless we manage stress alongside this, I don't think anyone can get to pure perfect healing. Not that there really is a thing as perfect healing anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
all of us are still on a journey, but I think that has to be part of it. I really changed my mind on so much, but I'll pause there and see what you have to say.
No, and I'm not surprised you brought up carbohydrates. I think this has become like for me the same thing. I was very low carb fasting, and now you've sort of seen it change a little bit. I mean, I've changed and added in carbohydrates, and I do think I have gone more towards a balanced approach. I know it sounds like cliche, but
Yeah.
I think there's some truth behind that because I think we try to, you, well, at least in health and wellness, you see people go on one side or the other, like it's like a political thing, right? But
Right.
like very dogmatic on
Yes.
whether it's just carnivore to complete vegetarian, vegan, and I think falling somewhere in between is completely fine and probably works best for most people.
I totally agree. In fact, it's one of the ways where I lose potential clients. If I have a potential client who has bounced around between every single fad diet and they love it, they're just looking for the next best fad.
Right.
That's not for me. I'm for the person who has bounced between all the fad diets and they're finally like, oh my gosh, I realize none of this works. Like, let me finally find something that works forever. And I do think that's balance. You're right. It's cliche and it's boring, and no one wants to hear, oh, yes, we actually do have to eat more vegetables and like protein, fat, and carbs are important. And sugar really isn't the best. And even though it has protein and fat, we probably can't eat bacon 3 meals a day every single day for the rest of our lives. Like all this stuff isn't as fancy or flashy, but I really do believe it's the answer.
And with your health journey, which you didn't explain, I actually wouldn't mind if you going through that a little bit.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it starts with me just being a hard charging person all the way since childhood. I have always been competitive with myself and always take things to the extreme. So when I went to college, I saw this cute guy who was on the track and cross country team. 20, however many, 21 years later, he's my husband. But
Oh.
he was running and I was like, oh, I never played sports. I never really thought about exercise, nutrition, any of that. Maybe I should run. So I started to run. I thought it was fun in a weird way. It was very challenging for me. But then I took it to the extreme. I started running a lot and I started reading what I could get my hands on for nutrition knowledge back then, were magazines, were like Shape magazine and Self magazine and whatever. And they were telling me eat half a protein bar for lunch and like spend 2 hours on the elliptical. And that's the answer. And so I did it and it worked. I felt really good for a couple of months. And then I slowly started to decline. I was also very stressed. Now we're taking me through graduation from Harvard into management consulting, which was a very demanding career. I'm now running a lot. I'm underfueling myself. I'm stressed. I'm not sleeping, like confluence of factors. I go to a doctor's office when I was 23. She tested my hormones, which honestly, looking back, I think was like pretty radical. I don't think most people back then would have tested hormones. But she looked at me and she was like, your hormones are lower than the postmenopausal women that I see. I don't know what happened. You must have to be on medication for the rest of your life. And I just knew right then that wasn't the answer for me. I'm not opposed to medication when it's needed, but I knew I was doing this. I just didn't know exactly how. And that finally started me on my journey to try to figure out what I was doing to myself and actually going to conferences and reading books instead of magazines and slowly starting to look at studies. And once I figured it out for myself, as many people relate to, it's just hard not to share it. So then I went to IIN and we heard the rest of that story.
So it was like a combination of probably just stress, chronic cardio.
Yes.
Under eating.
Yes.
And is this a common thing that you see with, I mean, men or women that come to you?
I think stereotyping a little bit. I think men tend to be higher on the stress, and I'm saying I was there too. So obviously it's not a this or that, but I think men tend to be higher on the chronic stress. Women tend to be higher on the chronic cardio. A lot of people are both, and both together just tends to be a recipe for disaster. I do believe there are people like, goodness, there are Olympic marathoners that might be healthy. So maybe it's possible. But I think for most people who have other lives and certainly other stress, and maybe they have genetics that make them more prone to oxidative stress, or they have a leaky gut, or they have whatever, that chronic cardio is probably a recipe for disaster. And then the men just either they don't realize that they're stressed, or they don't like to talk about it and they think it's a weakness. And they're like me, like I was like, no, I'll find any other solution, but I'm not going to actually tackle my stress. So I think the answer is yes, it's something I commonly see.
Yeah. And what about the under eating? And, it's like calories in, calories out. It's like a debatable thing. Some people live by it and some people don't really care too much for it. What are your thoughts around that?
Well, calories in, calories out is a thing. Like in a lab, if you are using a bomb calorimeter, which is how they measure calories in foods, there is a real thing called a calorie, which is how much energy that food has. So it is a real thing. If someone comes up to me with 2 bags of M&Ms and they say, I'm either going to eat this 500 calorie bag of M&Ms or this 200 calorie bag of M&Ms, of course, I'm going to say the 200 calorie bag, unless for some reason their goal was to get metabolically unhealthy, which I've never had. So calories are a thing. The problem is when it's in our body, a whole set of other factors happens. When I do eat that Twinkie, which is the classic hypothetical situation, a Twinkie that's 200 calories or broccoli that's 200 calories, whatever. When I eat the Twinkie, I have an insulin response. I have an inflammation response. That could potentially cause intestinal permeability or leaky gut. There are so many other things that happen that, in quotes, slow down our metabolism. So it is true that that has 200 calories, but the after effect of those 200 calories is much worse in the case of ultra processed food, resulting in more fat storage, more inflammation, more of all of these things that are leading to our problems. So it is a thing, but it's not the only thing, is what I say.
Right. I always thought it was like a too simplistic way of looking at things, because in your example, you have something like a Twinkie that probably has like minimal nutrients in it.
Yes.
And then you have broccoli or whatever else health food. And then, a lot more nutrient density and satiety can be from that. So
that's right. Yes. That old commercial Pringles, once you pop, you can't stop. It's true. For though I have no idea how many calories are in a can of Pringles or if they even make those anymore, but I bet it's like 1,000 calories or something. And you don't feel full after eating that because there are zero nutrients in there. Our brain, to get that rush of leptin, a satiety hormone, and to actually have fullness feeling, we have sensors in our stomach and all throughout our digestive tract. We need nutrients. We need macro, protein, fat, and carbs, and micro, the vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, all of that kind of stuff. We need those to feel full. So I totally agree with you. It's more complex, but it is true, in quotes, that calories are a thing.
And then when you're excuse me, I can't even talk. When you're working with someone, what is like the first place you start? Like, do you start with diet, or do you sort of try to find like that low-hanging fruit to make the biggest move to, help a client?
So I would say 99% of times we're going to start with diet because that's why people come to me. And I have to be a little more like sleuthy to get in my lifestyle things, which I think are just as and or sometimes more important. Sleeping and exercise and stress management and connection and nature and circadian rhythms and all of that kind of stuff, just as important.
Right.
But if I start there, people tend to be underwhelmed. So I want to start with diet, get them making some changes. I still don't do a drastic change. Like if anyone were eating, I don't know, fast food 3 times a day, I'm not going to say, well, tomorrow it's salmon and kale only. I don't do that because I don't find it sustainable, even though people would probably get quicker results if we changed everything. But like you said, I almost always start with diet.
And with that, like leaky gut is something you've brought up a few times. I figured we go into that in some detail. Maybe explain to the audience. Some of them might know, some of them might not know what that is.
Yeah, absolutely. So our gut lining is supposed to be semi-permeable. So for those watching the video, it's like you knit your fingers together like this, and then there are teeny gaps in here. Even though I'm trying to close my fingers tightly, there are teeny gaps in your gut lining through which escape things like vitamin C or any kind of small molecule, small beneficial particle from our food. But when we have stress, when we have excessive antibiotic use, when we have, for a lot of people, gluten activates something called zonulin, which opens that lining. When we have other inflammatory foods, when we have even digestive, like you might get food poisoning really bad or something like that. All these things can kind of make those junctions in your gut a little too open. And so now what's happening is I eat even a healthy food. Maybe I eat that broccoli you talked about, but my gut has little micro holes in it. And so not only a chunk of vitamin C passes into the bloodstream, but a whole chunk of broccoli passes into the bloodstream. And then my body freaks out. My immune system's like, that's weird. Broccoli's not supposed to be in the bloodstream. So it basically flags it and attacks it like it would any other foreign invader. And that process causes inflammation. So now every time I eat broccoli, which is still a healthy food for a lot of people, my immune system is going to perpetuate this inflammation response. My gut gets leakier and leakier and leakier. And for a lot of people with these chronic digestive issues, that's at the root of it. And some people honestly don't just have digestive symptoms. They might have skin rashes or acne outbreaks. They might have joint pain. They might have brain fog. They might have any number of other symptoms that comes back to the leaky gut.
Yeah, I always found that interesting. I went through FDN. I don't know if you've heard of functional.
Yes, I have.
Yeah,
That looks like a great program. I haven't been through it.
Yeah, recently finished a few months ago. It is a really nice program, and they talk a lot about the mucosal barrier damage that can happen, and these symptoms that you can get that might be something on the skin, might be headaches,
Yes.
fibromyalgia, and people don't always equate that to gut health, but
Yes.
a lot of times it comes back to that.
Yes, that's exactly right. I think I saw a study one time that said up to 70% of people at some time in their life will have intestinal permeability. That's a lot, but I honestly don't discount that research. A lot of us who just live in 2024, I mean, there's pollution, there's toxins everywhere. Our food supply has a bunch of stuff in it that causes leaky gut. Even though I try to eat a very healthy diet, I still can't avoid all of that kind of stuff. Like, sure, I don't drink out of plastic glasses in my home, but do I have contact with plastic? Of course, right? Do I ever have food sprayed with glyphosate? Of course. There are just things that we can't really avoid. So I do think a lot of us will deal with this at some point.
And stress, right? Stress
Yeah,
could cause leaky gut, which, right?
absolutely. Yes, very much.
What type of things do you do for yourself or for your clients to help overcome stress?
Oh, goodness. I do think it's an individual approach. So I have this button, I call it the magic button, and it doesn't do anything, unfortunately. But I ask people if you just had one day and you can't take care of your kids, you can't do work, you're not allowed to clean your house, you're literally not allowed to do anything productive, and anything's possible. You could fly to Tahiti, you could go to a Beyonce concert, whatever. Like, what would you do in that one day? And that's going to start to clue us in on what that person needs. So if they say, I would have a golf outing with 8 of my best friends, well, cool. Then they need connection. They need some nature. They need some activity. We're getting clued in. Or maybe they say, I would be laying in a hammock on a beach reading and not talking to anyone. Great. They need some downtime. They need some relaxation. But that gives us a start, because I really do think different people need different things based on not only their personality, but what their lifestyle is providing them at the moment. And then we just see if we can work that in. Like, I can't put anyone in Tahiti for an hour a day, but what can we do? Can we take small steps? People are so busy, and I use busy in air quotes because it's true, but it's a mental construct as well. It's one that I fall into all of the time, where I say, my schedule's so full. I've outlawed the word busy from my vocabulary, but there are other ways to get around it. My schedule's so full. My schedule's so full. Well, that's my choice, honestly. I
Mm-hmm.
set my own schedule. So how am I creating this? And someone else might say, well, it's not my choice. I have 4 kids and like 8 jobs and whatever. Like, there are some extreme situations out there, but we still do choose our mentality to let that overwhelm us. And we still do need some time. Even that person with 4 kids, like, must, even if they're a single parent, must ask for help to get little teeny breaks throughout the week. Everyone needs it. We're humans, not robots.
Yeah, I love that. And I like how you went about explaining like what that perfect day would look like and draw that to the client. Because a lot of times I'll just bring up, you know, self-care as far as like meditation or yoga, which some people just don't want to do,
Yeah.
right? So that but I like how you bring that up, because everyone sort of can find that self-care or that me time differently.
That's right. And don't get me wrong, I love meditation. I think I'm on day 16, 20 something of a streak. Like, I
Oh,
love meditation. And that was the 23-year-old in the doctor's office. If you had told me the solution was meditation, that would be a no-go, an
right.
absolute hard pass for me. I was not yet open to that. So I do think it's a process, and we have to meet people wherever they are. Maybe they'll find meditation in the future if that's right for them, and maybe not. I know a lot of healthy people who don't meditate. That's cool too. As long as we can get your own parasympathetic nervous system to be more comfortable engaging and get us out of that fight or flight. Sometimes there's nothing wrong with stress as long as it goes up and down. If we can be stressed and recover, be stressed and recover, cool. That's how the human body is designed to operate. It's just that chronic sympathetic activation that's the problem, as you know.
Yeah. And what would you say? I mean, other than stress, are there any other things that come up, like sleep? Is sleep? I mean, we always talk about sleep on this podcast, but are there certain sleep habits that or things that you try to implement with yourself or with your clients?
Yeah, it gets back to my nutrition approach being kind of the boring, trite ones, but it's true for sleep too. I start for sure with not having that phone right in bed and scrolling before
Hmm.
bed. And honestly, I don't even care if someone says, no, I love this is my only time to scroll through Instagram all throughout the day. I would rather them have 10 minutes of scrolling through Instagram and then go to bed, then unwind and go to bed 10 or 20 minutes later, as
Right.
opposed to doing that right before bed. I know my mind is prone towards ruminating thoughts. And if I'm not careful, I can wake up in the middle of the night, like going over my to-do list or my schedule for the next day or whatever. So I need that time to wind down. And I think most people do that too, do need that too. So it's that phone and that stimulation before bed. It's a cool, quiet, dark environment, as dark as possible. 60 to 68 degrees is technically the optimal temperature. 60 is chilly. I don't know.
Yeah.
That's too cold for me, but
Yeah.
getting it cooler than most of us are comfortable with. I find having a routine really important. So it's short for me. It's not anything crazy, but I'll take my dogs out. I'll take my magnesium. I'll foam roll for like 5 minutes, short, brush my teeth, get in bed, literally read a novel, like nothing. I can't even read a nutrition book before bed. I have to just do something totally mindless and then I'm out. But all those things really help, and it could look different for every person. Some twist of those, though, I think is important. What
Yeah.
would you add on?
No, that was good. I do the foam rolling before bed.
Yeah, it's great.
Just some self-care, just like maybe 10 minutes of it, not
Yeah.
that long. I wouldn't add much on. I do like to read, and it doesn't last long. I'll probably read for 10 minutes and I'm
Me
out,
too.
right?
Yes.
Cool, dark environment. I'm excited. It's supposed to be coming in the next week. Is I got that 8 sleep pod. Have you heard of
Oh,
this?
cool. Yes, I've heard of it. I don't have one though.
So we keep the temperature in our room about 65, which is
Great.
great, but
Yeah.
I still find myself getting warm. And
Yeah.
I have a little dog who's actually not the one in the background, but another guy who it runs at like 115 degrees,
Oh
and
my goodness.
he's like 30 pounds. So you won't even know he's on the bed sometimes, but the heat just like radiates. And it's like,
Wow.
so like that just gets me warm. And anyway, so I'm going to try this 8 sleep pod and see how it goes. And it's supposed to cool the mattress, and I'm excited for it. So
That's great. I'm
yeah.
so curious if the dog won't like it now, if the dog's gonna not be on the
Honestly,
bed or what.
yeah, and I'll be fine with that because I my one dog I trained to not come on the bed, and the other dog didn't quite work out that way. But we'll see how. Yeah, if he doesn't like it, then he'll have to find somewhere else to sleep, which will
It's
be
so funny. We could talk about dogs all day, but one of my dogs is only allowed on the bed Friday and Saturday, and he knows when it's Friday and
really.
Saturday. I don't know
That's
how. I guess
interesting.
we're more relaxed or whatever. And the other dog has never been on the bed. So I don't know how that works. It's probably not the right thing if you're applying that to kids, but for dogs, somehow it works.
Yeah, and yeah. So no, I think as far as routine, that sounds good. I like to not eat too close to bed is another
Yeah.
big one. Do you, as far as like timing of eating and stuff, is that something that you touch on with clients? I know, you hear different things, but are there any like some principles that you work with?
Yeah, I do aim for that 12-hour fast as a baseline for
Mm.
everyone, which sounds really easy. A lot of times people are like, oh my gosh, 12 hours. But most people that come into my office are not doing that. They're having a snack literally right before bed, and then they're waking up, going over to the coffee pot and putting in sugar or something else, which is breaking the fast. So I think unless they're sleeping for 12 hours, which no one is, that's not cutting it. I do think it's best to shift your fasting window earlier in the day. So if you were going to go for just 12 hours, maybe making it 7 to 7 or something like that is better. And then if your stress hormones are not crazy out of whack, if your sex hormones are not crazy out of whack, if you're not training for some kind of endurance exercise, if you don't have an eating disorder or history of an eating disorder, then I'll start shortening that window, that eating window. I'm never someone, except in extreme situations, I can count like a handful of clients who have ever gone to that extreme 20 hours or OMAD, 1 meal a day or something like that. I don't think that's beneficial for most people. But can some people shorten that 12-hour eating window to then 10 and then 8? Yes, a lot of people can successfully. But I also want to make it realistic. So I know for me, I don't always have what I would recommend would be 3 to 4 hours before bed without eating. I see clients until 7:30. I go to bed super early because I wake up at 4:30 to 4:50, depending on the day. So it just doesn't always work out. And I give myself the grace I would give to other people. Do your best. I have my dinner ready. I'm going to eat it right at 7. But if that doesn't give me the whole 3 to 4 hours and I get 2.5 on some nights, I'm going to be okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, my theory on fasting has changed a bit. I think it's good for some people as far as giving them boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It works well. And I found for myself, just being like active, uh, I wasn't able to get enough food in this
Yeah.
that certain restricted time period, and not enough protein. So I think that I like it to the fact that, like, okay, because most people that are eating stuff after 7, 8 o'clock, it's probably they're eating something that's not really serving them.
Yeah.
So like just cutting that eating window off at 7, let's just say they go to bed at 10, that gives them 3 hours to digest.
Yeah.
I think that's like a good rule of thumb.
I think that is as well. And I definitely agree with you here. It tends to be more of my male clients, although there are several women too that fall into this camp where they just are not getting enough. If they're
Right.
fasting shorter and shorter and shorter, I mean, frankly, you have to eat a whole lot of salmon and broccoli, since we keep using that as an example, in a couple meals a day, and digestively it's not that comfortable. No one wants to chow through 8 cups of broccoli in a meal. So I do think spacing it out from a muscle protein synthesis standpoint, but as well from just a nutrient standpoint, tends to be good for people who run on the side of undernourishment.
Yeah. And then you mentioned, hey, getting your doctorate, you really liked it and enjoyed it. What was
Yeah.
like one thing that stuck out that you learned that you applied today?
Oh my goodness. Applied today, like things we've already talked about or other things?
Yeah, yeah, maybe just something else. Like what was like something that you learned that you like didn't know, and you sort of apply. Yeah.
I think the most paradigm shifting class for me was the immune class, which when I saw immune on the syllabus, I was like, I don't really care. That's boring. But it was not boring at all. We went through everything from cancer, a couple weeks on cancer, which I didn't actually think like, oh, cancer just happens. There's nothing we can do about it. But until the class, I didn't realize how much we actually can do about it and how much in many types of cancers we are in control. Then even just like the common cold and COVID and all of that kind of stuff, actually understanding what is happening in those cases has helped me when my clients get sick with anything. Hopefully it's just a cold and not something more severe, but it's really helped me serve them better. So if anyone, I mean, I'm sure there are great classes out there on whatever the Coursera or whatever the cool YouTube for that matter. There are plenty of things out there. I would just encourage people to look into the immune system. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think like nowadays, especially with YouTube, like you can learn quite a bit. I mean,
Yes.
it's like people rely on their doctors, which is good and bad, I think, right? I think nowadays, like most of my blood work and my wife's blood work, unfortunately we just pay out of pocket and just
Yeah,
get.
me too.
Yeah. And it's, hopefully the system will change where it's not all just based on insurance and just what you need. Cause I have a general practitioner, but I've gone to him not much. And he'll only order certain labs that are a must. And it's like, well, I want to see like the whole picture here.
Yep.
When it comes to gut health, I am curious, like, do you do any testing to see if people have intestinal permeability? Because people are probably wondering, well, how do I know if I have it?
Yeah. My favorite gut test is the Gut Zoomer by Vibrant Wellness. It's an awesome test. It has 80 or 90 strains of bacteria. It has all of the commensal things, all of the pathogens, viruses, E. coli, parasites, you name it. And then it also tests for markers of intestinal permeability and various markers of inflammation. So I love that. I have run it on myself a few times and many clients, but not everyone because it's really expensive. It's over $500 for that test. And that's just not practical for a lot of people when they're already paying for a program with us. So I'm really excited for things like that to get cheaper. I think on a slightly cheaper scale, the Viome test is pretty interesting. And people can order that out of pocket without a practitioner. There are lots of other good, like GI Map is really good. There are plenty of other good ones. Most of them are just really expensive. So I save them for when well, let me say the reverse. If I feel like, oh, this is a home run, I know this person's just eating too much X, or drinking alcohol is one we haven't discussed, drinking too much alcohol, which can cause intestinal permeability, then I'll probably be like, let's hold off on the gut test for a little while. Let's see if we can resolve this without, do some supplements, clean up the diet, work on stress. And if we're running into a roadblock, then I'll probably push the gut test.
Okay. That makes sense. Yeah, I've used GI Map before.
Great.
Yeah, that's a good one. What are your thoughts on alcohol?
So I drink alcohol. I also think the vast majority of people who drink alcohol drink too much. I am fortunate. I have several other addictive qualities like work or even sugar. If I'm not careful, I could go too heavy on that. But I have zero desire to drink every day. I have zero desire to drink more than one or two drinks ever at a time. So for me, having like next weekend, I'm celebrating my 14th anniversary. Will I have a drink? Yes, absolutely. I think that's fine. There's plenty of research that shows benefits of alcohol. I think that's not true. I actually think if we can parse down the studies even more, what's happening is the relaxation benefits when people have alcohol, and the community, maybe they're slowing down, enjoying a meal with family, something like that. So I think that is responsible for more of the benefits than the alcohol itself. But I believe alcohol is a toxin, and I don't think that the way that most people, frankly, a lot of people who come into my office are consuming the equivalent of 3 to 4 drinks every single night and then more on the weekends. I don't think that's conducive to health.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. I think if you're overdoing it, it's like with most things, right? Like same thing with caffeine, right? There's been shown to be benefits for caffeine and coffee bean, but like the dose is in the poison, what is it?
Yes.
The dose is in the poison. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree. If someone can have, a few drinks, I think the guidelines are 14 drinks a week for men and 7 drinks a week for women. Even 14 seems a bit high to me, but if someone can have it in moderation and they're getting that relaxation benefit and they love it, fine. Too much though, we've got to cut it back.
Yeah. And I always ask this to most of my guests that come on, if you were going to give like one tip to an individual who's looking to get their body back to what it once was, maybe 10, 15 years ago, what one tip would you give them?
Oh my goodness. That's such a great question. I'm going to go with another somewhat cliche answer, but it's one that we haven't touched too much upon, which is vegetables. I think people are so focused on what to take out. We've talked about alcohol, we've talked about sugar, we've talked about processed food, and that's really important too. But I'll do this exercise where I'll literally give my clients a Post-it notepad and I'll just say, for the next week until you see me, just put a tally for every vegetable that you eat. And they'll be like, this is so dumb. I eat plenty of vegetables. And then they'll come back and it's like 2 or 3 tallies for the week. That's not enough. When we're focused on taking out this stuff and adding in protein, which I think is so important, we've got to fill in the gaps and get those nutrients from vegetables. And I'm not opposed to fruit either. I think we should get more vegetables than fruit, but I eat fruit myself as well. Love it. I just think most people are not getting enough. And if we look back historically, that is where we got the bulk of our nutrition. So I believe in a fist-sized serving and pushing people towards the ultimate end goal of 8 servings per day. The vast majority of my clients don't get there. But if they're getting 1 per day right now and we can get them to 5, that's huge.
Nice. Okay. And do you ever find with your clients, like, you teach them to sort of cook the vegetables? Just because sometimes I know it could cause gut irritation, especially if it's raw vegetables.
Absolutely. Yeah. If they're newer to it, we've got to start soft and mushy, which is not very appealing. So I'll try to phrase it in a better way for a lot of people. But like, think cooked zucchini, cooked sweet potatoes, cooked asparagus, all of that kind of stuff is going to be much easier on the digestive tract. And as we ease our way in, I can eat a lot of raw vegetables right now, but I could not before without having discomfort, gassiness, bloating, just like, didn't feel good.
Mm-hmm.
One part of that is easing in your body, so you produce the right digestive enzymes and you have that microbiome that can thrive on fiber. But another part of that is most people do not chew their food well enough. And if you're taking a big old bite of raw cabbage or something like that that's super fermentable and you're not breaking it down with your teeth, that is going to cause a lot of GI distress. So we have to start slow, start cooked, start with the less fermentable veggies and chew, and then ease our way up.
Yeah, that's great. And I love that you bring up eating slowly. I remember doing a video on that a while back, and I had a guest on that talked about how he'll have people eat with chopsticks.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah,
hey, it could be a good move. I like that.
I wouldn't get very far,
Yeah.
but it's a good place to start. Well, this was great. Where's the best place for people to find you, Megan?
Everything is linked on my website, thelyonsshare.org. It's LYONS share.org. I have a blog there that I've been doing since 2013, my podcast, how to work with me, lots of freebies, all that good stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll definitely put a link in the show notes. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing all this great knowledge.
Thanks so much. I had fun today. I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. Thanks for listening to the Get Lean, Eat Clean podcast. I understand there are millions of other podcasts out there, and you've chosen to listen to mine, and I appreciate that. Check out the show notes at briangrin.com for everything that was mentioned in this episode. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast and share it with a friend or family member that's looking to get their body back to what it once was. Thanks again, and have a great day.